Hi, my name is Dr. Rayshawn Ray, aiming to speak truth to power, and this is my daily thought. Why and how did President-elect Donald Trump make the silent majority's intersectional dreams come true? And why is Secretary Clinton's loss on white women? Well, first, you have rural America, which primarily working class individuals who are poor, and outside of the South, mostly white. Even though even in the South, there are a lot of whites who are in rural America. And part of that, if you've driven through rural America or you're from there, you know that work has literally disappeared. Now, obviously, sociologist Dr. William Julius Wilson, who's at Harvard, has talked about this over the past few decades about how it disappeared in urban areas, primarily related to African Americans, whether that be in Gary, Indiana, or St. Louis, Missouri, or Memphis, Tennessee, or Baltimore. And we've seen what's happened as it relates to that, particularly as it relates to issues around policing and other forms of sort of systemic forms of violence that exist. And I think sometimes we forget that these same sort of processes happen in poor, rural, predominantly white areas as well. Now, oftentimes this becomes it becomes a lag because oftentimes things hit harder in minority neighborhoods. So as people say, you know, when white America catches a cold, Black America's already had the flu and pneumonia by the time that happens. But as it relates to white rural America, there's very little work. There's very little work. And then if you have a university there, say like in Clinton, New York, where I was recently at Hamilton College, I was talking to some individuals who work at the university who are from Clinton, who are from that particular part of New York, and it's very rural. And they talk about the wealth of the students and the professors who are there, and the way that they are brushed out of certain elite spaces, how they're called uneducated, not just less educated or having a bachelor's degree or having a high school degree, but simply being uneducated. And they're sick and tired of being told that they're not smart, because obviously simply because you have degrees doesn't make you extremely intelligent, and simply because you don't have degrees doesn't make you unintelligent. And so they felt that. They felt not having work, they felt being perceived as being unintelligent, and they felt like they haven't mattered. I mean, in sociological research in particular, there are two groups that we rarely focus on. That's kind of these elite minorities, even though we're starting to see more research on middle class blacks and Latinos. But the other group are working class and poor rural whites. And what's interesting about that is for some reason, even in the rhetoric that political pundits and politicians use, they use middle class as if it's something not prideful about being working class, something about adhering to the Protestant work ethic. And people were sick and tired of that. And in Trump, they saw someone who they could latch on to their social class angst of not being included, but also someone who they felt could bring jobs back to their communities. Even if I'm fairly skeptical that could actually happen. And so what we saw with the Electoral College, I mean, it wasn't even close. I mean, Donald Trump won by a landslide. He won states that haven't been won by Republicans since like the 80s and 90s. I mean, Wisconsin, Michigan. I mean, and of course, the normal battleground states, North Carolina, Ohio, Florida. Political pundits were like, oh, he's going to have to sweep all of these. I mean, he has an uphill battle. He's not going to be able to do it. I mean, he swept them all. If you look at the United States, there's a map put out that shows the percentage of counties, or shows counties in red that increased their percentage of Republican voters. And I mean, it's a sea of red. I mean, the United States has spoken very loud and clearly about what they think. And so, I mean, part of thinking about the sea of red, I mean, it speaks to, in some respects, I mean, particularly because Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, that possibly we need to think about different ways of dealing with the Electoral College, particularly as it has roots in slavery and white supremacy and racism, and even to today, the fact that prisoners are included in the population count. So you can look at where federal and state prisons are located across the country, and it starts to paint a different picture about our Electoral College. However, the other part of this, as it relates to white working class America, is that they also have the privilege to disregard the hurtful, hateful, and discriminatory comments that President-elect Trump made. I mean, these comments have real consequences. People feel unsafe in the country that they were born into, that they've immigrated into. And I think sometimes we forget, I mean, that President-elect Trump's wife is an immigrant, but for some reason she escapes all of the narratives and bad talking that other groups actually face. I mean, just over the past week, there have been over 200 hate crimes reported across the United States. And these aren't hate crimes of people who supported Clinton or Bernie Sanders or Black Lives Matter doing these sort of things. Instead, these are mostly Trump supporters who are threatening people's lives around the country. You know, and so part of this is thinking, you know, when I hear people saying, is Trump racist? He's definitely made racist comments. Is he ethnocentric? He's definitely made ethnocentric comments. Is he homophobic? He's definitely made homophobic comments. Is he sexist? He's definitely said and done things that are sexist. Does he have some sort of bias against people with disabilities? He's definitely made comments and acted in ways that suggest that's the case. So what does that mean? For people who are in white, working class America, in many ways they can disregard, they have the privilege to disregard all of these forms of inequality that President Trump is perpetuating. And one of the biggest ones, obviously for Secretary of State Clinton, has to do with gender. When it comes to this election wasn't on, I mean, the outcome wasn't on minorities. It wasn't even on poor people. I mean, because in many respects that was split by race. Instead, this was on white women. Hillary Clinton thought she had white women in her back pocket. And instead, they clearly told her that they feel that she doesn't represent every woman. But there are theories that support this, because this is only primarily for white women. So she felt like she had them in her back pocket. Donald Trump had more white women vote for him than the number of white women who voted for Hillary Clinton. He overwhelmingly won Protestant white women. These are white women who go to church, mind you, every day, looking in the pulpit to a man telling them what they should think and do as it relates to social life. He also won middle-aged women, so women who are in their 40s on up to their 60s. He won them overwhelmingly. And of course, he won conservative women. And so this speaks to a series of theoretical concepts, a couple that I want to highlight. One in particular being the concept called doing gender. Doing gender asserts, and Facebook CEO and other very powerful and powerful women in leadership roles have talked about this. Doing gender essentially states that when men outperform expectations, or when they're extremely successful, when they show leadership qualities, they're actually heralded. So not only do men follow them and respect them more, but women do the same thing. When women, on the other hand, are powerful and in leadership positions, they get hit with the exact opposite. They're less liked, and even if people respect them, they don't like them. And unfortunately, for this election, it's turned into in many regards as a popularity contest. I don't have to like my president. All I have to do is respect my president and feel that other people respect them. And unfortunately, what's happened is that there are countries around the world who now respect the United States significantly less because of the election of Donald Trump. And so Trump is appealing, however, because he epitomizes white hegemonic masculinity. So this wasn't on blacks and other minority groups. This wasn't on, the lack of voting of people in urban areas or in predominantly black areas, even though the overall vote was just down from 2012. Instead, this was about white women, in many respects, voting against their own self-interest. This is the reason why people are putting together a million woman march scheduled in Washington, D.C. the day after the inauguration. And some people say it's a day late and a dollar short. I don't think it's ever too late to voice your concerns and protest because we do have future elections that we have to attend to. And the problem with the Democrats is they didn't do that very well. Donald Trump had a wonderful plan, a wonderful game plan to bring out people who hadn't been brought out to vote in years, who had been forgotten. He implemented Nixon's Southern strategy better than Nixon did, right? Which was essentially getting working class whites to vote against their own self-interest, and he did that. So as it relates to this, you put social class and race and gender together, you get a Trump intersectional dream fulfilled. And the problem is that, similar to many Americans around the country, I'm fearful for individuals with marginalized identities, and I'm scared for my two black boys growing up in America under a Trump administration. So as always, conversations matter like Black Lives in Books. And I hope this has sparked one.